I couldn't get a better shot than that. That's my best shot at the thumbnail. It'll be what it'll be. That doesn't get anybody's attention. Doesn't matter. All right. So some of these are the newer ones that I just did. So I believe, let's see, I've got W, K, H, and I. So I have 4 of them to show off tonight available. Yeah, I didn't get on here on Sunday because the friend of mine whose living space I'm renting, um, he just came down with COVID. So he's over 60, has kidney problems, is pre-diabetic and asthmatic. So it's not a good run for that. So we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, this is kind of cheesy. Like, I knew it was going to be one of the harder ones to do, but making little brushes, these are tiny little brushes. This is my hair. This is what I pulled out of the batch of super soft dog hair for some of the more springy bristles. So that is one of the things I was definitely going for, was stiffness in the bristles, and it seems to have worked. So we've got some ability to spring, and when they wet, the bristles do cling to each other a little bit better than they do on here. So I imagine they'll be pretty good with some acrylics. I don't know how good they'll be with like a watercolor, but we can always give it a try later. Now, the dog hair was a pain in the butt. I think with a different dog, I could probably go further with it. So what I ended up having to do was pick through the bag of hair for the bristly hairs rather than the soft undercoat, which is mostly what they shed. They shed the undercoat. So I picked out the individual hairs, lined them up, pulled any loose ones out, tucked them back in, pulled any loose ones out, tucked them back in, lined them up, twisted them in the middle, hit them with a dot of super glue to hold them in the middle, and then I bent them down, pinching them down into that position, and then hit them with another dot of super glue to make the bristle group. And that's that. It's a buttload of work just to get that, which is interesting because this is my hair, but not from my head. What I ended up doing was, that sounds inappropriate. No, this is, I pulled it out of my hairbrush, and because I have longer hair, when I brush my hair, sometimes full-length strands come out. And so I took probably about 4 or 5 full-length strands of my hair, wound them around my finger multiple times until they formed a bunch, pulled the bunch off, pinched one side, clipped the other side open, and then again just glued them in the middle, and then made sure they stuck in that position. And the little brush handle, I will have to find a better brush handle. I will probably see if I can get some disposable straws or something. But these are the hollow plastic tubes from some cotton swabs. And I just cut the cotton swab end off of them and stuck in the super glued middle, and then hit them with another dab of glue to hold them in place. And they actually did pretty good for a little bit of a test run. But it is the experiment with H, hair. So that's that. What was the H-I? Oh, inlay. So I made another one of the oak rings, and I ebonized it with my ferric acetate. So I left the back unfinished. So it's got the ferric acetate on it that I got to go to a fairly decent black. And then I did a engraving roughly on the surface, and I have some silver-ish plant wire. I would wager you it's aluminum. I was going for a little bit of a deco pattern, so it starts with just the center one being slightly longer than the other two, and then it has a gap in the middle, and it goes to the center one being longer than the other two. And what I think I'm going to try to do is see if I can inlay or set a small stone or something in the middle. I then hit it with a little bit of polish to polish up the exterior and make that black pop a little bit more. It's not like black. It's like you can kind of see in here there's a little bit of a dark brown tone to it, but to the eye in general, like household lighting, it can have a very like a black plastic almost look. There is a little bit of a grain to it that you can see, and some of that I'm not going to be able to get to take up some of that ebonizing. The ebonizing, the trick I had with some of the ebonizing was taking the wood and the veneers and wrapping them and securing them with some cyanoacrylate, so a super glue kind of material. And depending on the area of where you're putting the glue on, it can soak in enough that it prevents any finishes from getting into the grain of the wood. So you can sand away, and if the cyanoacrylate has soaked enough into the grain of the wood, it'll prevent things from sticking. So I have to be like super careful about how I do that. I think what I may have to experiment with doing is using, I may have to use like the cyanoacrylate lets me form the base of the ring, and then I can use the further overlap, that additional top layer. I can adhere it maybe with something like an animal hide glue, which is less likely to be resistant to aqueous based finishes. So the ferric acetate is vinegar and iron. And so you get rusty vinegar as what you're essentially working with. And that should soak into pretty much anything that'll soak in water. And I feel like an animal hide glue for that top layer would not waterproof the surface enough that finish can't get to it. So I may have to see if I can dabble with some of that. Like the cyanoacrylate is really important to, when you size the ring right, to anchor that first sizing loop. Everything after that, if you've got enough, like you build the first loop, as soon as you start overlapping it, you put that first little bit of cyanoacrylate, and if you go around another time or two, these veneers were thicker than a plain shaving. So if you were to do plain shavings off of a piece of oak board, they would be thinner enough, and they wouldn't have that paper backing, that as you lay that down, that first ring, you can do 2 or 3 more rings without getting too thick a material. So I feel like if I were to use plain shavings, and if I were to do the first layer with the cyanoacrylate, and then put the finish on with a animal hide glue, that I will have to do a wrap of tape or some other material so that I can hold it, clamp it in that place. That's if I were to do more ebonizing and inlay on stuff like that. That's probably what I'd do more of. I don't know that I would do a lot of inlay on rings like that. That was just, I was trying to do an inlay for that one particular project. This other one, like, I know I wanted to make my own ring from scrap materials, or not ring, my own knife from scrap materials. This is not from scrap. This was a kit. So there's a part of me that's a little disappointed, but it came as a bunch of pieces that I put together and make fit. There's a little bit of a gap in the handle that I'm not super enthusiastic with. And you can see on here, these are clearly laser cut pieces for the blanks, and the edges are still rough. So what I'm going to probably do, I tried to get the blanks on the side to lay flat, and it's not a matter of like these ends. I feel like it's like, you can see there's a little gap there, but it's still, there's a gap on the inside here. I tried to super glue them down, and super glue wasn't sticking to this surface. So what I need to do is sand down the edges, and I will probably try some epoxy um, on the to get the blanks to stick to it. So in all probability, part of the reason it's not laying flat is when they made the laser cuts for these, the holes between this one and maybe this one do not line up correctly so that the backside can lay flat. The backside is fine. There's no gap there. The front side tends to lift a little bit to warp around the distortion that the not quite aligned pegs are. And honestly, I don't know that I feel there's a lot of reason other than for cosmetics to worry too much about having these 3 rivets, because I can push those rivets in and out. They're not holding anything. The only thing they're holding against is this sliding this way. And honestly, you could do that with this front peg and the peg that runs all the way through for the back spring. So like you only really need 2 points to anchor something like that. So it does fold. It's not a bad little knife kit. I mean, it's one of the cheaper ones I could find on Amazon. It's an all right kit. I do find it interesting that for some reason the blade lays sort of to one side in there. And again, I would almost wager you it's because the hole for the top of this peg and the hole for this bottom of the peg do not line up perfectly. So it's tending to torque it off to one side. It's not a perfect kit, but I mean, honestly, it's a folding knife, which I would have probably done a fixed blade knife if I were making a knife from scratch for myself for the first time. But, you know, learning a little bit about the folding knife mechanisms, one of the other things I wanted to think about doing at some point was to make my own Swiss Army knife. Maybe not like a Swiss Army knife, but a multi-tool knife. Because I have a personal favorite multi-tool knife right now. I've had for years, and it's this tiny little thing with a little thing on the top that you push the button and slide it forward, and a pen pops out of the end of it, and you can use it to write with. I love that feature. Finding the pens for it is almost impossible, and they're like $15 a little cartridge, and they dry up within a year of getting them, whether or not you use them. So I want to see if I can build a larger size with something that takes a standard cheap ballpoint pen insert into it. Even if I have to trim off some of that extra space at the back of the refills, just being able to refill it with some cheap ballpoint pen out of like a Staples or a Walmart section would be ideal. And then on top of that, my little pen has my little Swiss Army knife has a Phillips head screwdriver, a flat blade that I use a lot for opening boxes. So it's like it doesn't have that curve on the tip of it that curves up. It's full flat with the back being curved. So the blade is fully flat. You could use it for scraping like a razor blade if you needed to scrape a sticker or something off. I did break the tip off of it accidentally at one point. So it's got a sort of a jagged tip on it. But that whole straight edge blade on it is super useful. It has I think it's supposed to be an orange peeler. It looks like it's like pretending to be a blade. It goes all the way up to the tip and has this straight piece for a blade tip, and then a back hook that goes down, and I think it's meant for that back hook to hook into the flesh of an orange and start cutting in and peel away. But the rest of it is mostly not bladed. That flat part of the tip is bladed, and I think some of that back hook is bladed. So, I mean, that I've used for things. There's this little, I think it's supposed to be a golf ball, something or other, or a cuticle pusher. I don't know which. I don't know what model of Swiss Army knife it is, but it's this little thing that looks like those little, I don't know if you've ever gotten those little metal spatulas. Uh, they're not spatulas, but the little tools you use for scooping small proportions, like milligram amounts of chemistry set chemicals into each other. That little scoop that has that, it's not even a spoon. It's, I, I mean, it is just a slight curve. It looks like a fingernail. If you grew out a fingernail this long, perfectly straight, and made it out of metal, that would be one of the scoops I'm thinking of. And my little knife has one that's about this long, and it's made out of a slightly thicker metal, but it has that little channel. It's not like a channel. It's a, a groove. It's not even a groove. I don't know what to call it. It has a curve to it, like a fingernail curve. It's just, but it's thicker than some of those disposable spatulas for chemistry. But it's good for portioning out small, thin amounts of stuff, and it's also a really good scraping tool. I've used it to degrout showers in the past. So just get in there and scrape, and it's got a very rounded front. So it's not going to gouge the material you're scraping off of, but it's going to get underneath of it and pull it up in a spoon-like way. It's got a Phillips head screwdriver, a pair of scissors. Trying to think what else it had on there. I mean, it has, I mean, those things in and of themselves are some of the most useful tools on a Swiss Army knife, and they're not ones you find on most standard Swiss Army knives. So I'd like to make a knife with versions of those, with a few of the other things that I find useful on a multi-tool. I I feel like I would want maybe a small, I would almost call it like an Allen wrench that has a set of like a socket that fits over top of it that I can put in different screwdriver bits for like a torque or flathead or other bits. And I've thought about a few other features that I would like to include. I know I've seen some Swiss Army knives that have like a pair of pliers on them, and I go back and forth on that. It's not the most versatile tool in the format that comes in a Swiss Army knife. It's sort of like a clunky pair of scissors on a Swiss Army knife. I might go for something like that. I'll figure it out. But I would like ideally to be able to say like, this is the multi-tool I want to build in a pocket knife format. And being able to do that, like the awl on the back of a Swiss Army knife, the one that you can bore holes and stuff, I could have used something like that for making a socket for setting a bead or something in the front of this ring. I don't currently have any of my drill stuff with me, and because I'm quarantining in the house here because I've been exposed to somebody who's tested positive for COVID. As much as I've already had it, I can't guarantee that I can't get it more than once, and so I have to be careful. And so I can't go trucking about trying to find my tools somewhere else at a storage unit or whatever. So I have to sort of restrict myself. And I didn't get the chance to get my rotary tool. Do I have it in my car? I would doubt it, but it's possible. So, yeah, there's some limitations on some of the things I'm going to be able to achieve, but I will do my best to get as much of it done as possible. I've been playing around with a few of the other projects, but one of the other ones I did the other day that just tickles me to no end is the wooden whistle. It works. It's super easy. So I left it unfastened so I can show this off. This is literally a piece of wooden dowel that I whittled. So I whittled the front down so it's a flat and a curve on the bottom. So like curve on the bottom, a slightly angled up flat, carved down into that, carve down into that, and then just chunk out that middle with that knife that I was just chunk it out. And then this is a piece of the oak veneers that I've been playing with. I just wet it, wrapped it around the dowel, and you can kind of see the notch that I made accidentally, well, not accidentally, but in the back when I slipped it on at a different angle so that I could make the notch for the whistle component. So basically the whistle component was just a cut down, and then cut it in an angle, and it left a notch in the dowel to make it work. I can probably hit this with some wood glue, pop it into place, and it would be a permanent finish on the whistle. And so what I could probably stain it too if I wanted to. And then this is a much longer dowel. So what I did was just carved my way into splitting the two halves from each other and made the little wooden whistle. And it's one of those things where like you're gouging out all of that wood in the middle and you're carving up all these individual pieces, hoping, like praying as you go, that when you get to the end, it's going to work. Because even when you have that notch first in there, you could blow in there and it just goes, and it doesn't make any sound. And you're like, please, 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 please work when I get to the end of it. And sure enough, it seems to have worked out. I can't believe that worked. Well, I know it worked. I know the principle of it and how it works. It's just one of those moments where like you spend about an hour working on a thing and then you finish it and you're like, please work, please work, please work. And then you're just tickled to peaches if it works. So those are like the 4, I guess technically 5 because there were 2 brushes that I've got to show off right now. Working on a few other things. I'm just looking at the rest of the month and I'm like, am I gonna make it to the end of the month with all of them done? I'm hoping so. I still have some more on the list that more than there are days left in the month by a good stretch. So there are definitely aspects of a few of them. The Sgraffito, visual focus depth, Yeseria, and Xerox art are going to be difficult, but the one I chose to do for astronomy may also be a little tricky to get done. I'm gonna see if it's possible. So I was looking at making an astrolabe, and I did a little looking around, and there's some sites that can make you something you could print out to make an astrolabe. My printer doesn't freaking work right now, and my landlord / friend contacted me the first day he was down with the fever of the COVID, and he's still in the midst of that COVID fever. He contacted me with the question of whether or not I was going out, if I could catch him a cartridge for his printer. So there's not currently a working printer on this property. I had to kind of tell him, like, dude, we touched the same doorknobs within the last week. We've been in and out of the house. Not that long ago, we were shoveling the driveway together. We exchanged shovels. Yes, I've had it before. I don't know whether or not I can catch it or transmit it right now. So it's not really a good idea for me to be going out and interacting with the public. So I don't know that I'm going to take that risk, but I'm going to kind of see where we're at. I think they say like the maximum number of days before exposure and showing symptoms would be 7 days. I don't think I'm going to get symptoms. My concern is predominantly that I could be an asymptomatic carrier. But I mean, I tested in December and they said I had the antibodies. So I don't know. I really don't know if it makes sense for me to take that chance to go run errands or something like that. And it's sort of a pain in the ass because a few of the things that I would really like to have been able to do would require me to go get something, because apparently half the raw materials I would use for some of my projects, you can order them on Amazon. They're going to take till mid-March to get here. And I'm like, like it was my big concern early on that the UV marker was going to take 15 days to get here. And it turned out that was fine with the timeline of other projects that I was working on, but I was really hoping to get that done earlier. And certain projects out there, like some of the items that I would needed to get if I wanted to order from Amazon, it'd be like $5 for shipping, and it would take 2 weeks to get here. And I'm like, I don't have the time or the energy to wait for that. Like, I got stuff I need to be working on, and frankly, I'm anxious about my roommate or my landlord / friend with COVID. I mean, it very well may be a factor of, if he doesn't make it, I may have to figure out where else to live, because that's another one of those situations where, like, just what I needed to figure out right now. So that's been a little bit of a bummer on everything right now. I would hate to lose him. I don't mean to make it all sound like it's all about what it means to me, but it would be super unfortunate for a lot of us if he ended up going. He's got a family, and I'm just hoping that he makes it through all right and he doesn't give it to anybody else in the process. So that's sort of where we are right now. I'm almost at a half an hour for tonight. Sorry I wasn't on Sunday. That's the nature of surprise pandemic issues, I guess. So I'm hoping over the course of the next few days that we get signs that things are getting better. And I will have some more things to show off on, what is it, Thursday? Yeah, this Thursday I will have a few more things to show off. And then Sunday, I'm hoping to be able to show off everything else. So what I need to figure out is, if I'm gonna do the astrolabe for astronomy, I might have to do the cheater version of it, where maybe it's not cheater, maybe it's the more authentic make it yourself approach, but I may have to use the technique I used for the UV art, where I pulled up some artwork on the screen of my computer, taped up something, and traced over that pattern. I may have to do that for the astrolabe and see if I could make that work. There's a little caveat that the design I saw for the astrolabe uses a translucent, like a transparent acetate sheet or something like that. And I suppose there's probably a few pieces of thin, clear plastic that I could use if I've got a Sharpie marker that'll work for it, which I don't think I do. I might have something that I could work with. We'll see. We'll find out. But I might be able to tape up some simple materials and make a functional astrolabe by tracing it on the screen of my computer. Now, it's not going to be easy because it's upright, and I'll be sitting here leaning into the screen and tracing through material. So it's not the ideal situation, but being able to pull it off, I think I would almost be more interested in what it would take to pull that off than I would be if I printed out some things, cut them out, and stuck them together. So it's going to be an interesting little experiment. But we should, the other one I'm going to have a little frustration with is the napkin rings. The style I've decided to go with, I need to see if I can find a rigid pipe or something like that and a hammer. Because what I need to do is twist together some aluminum like plant wire so that I have a twist pattern, and then hammer it flat. So not only does it actually lock it into those positions, but it also sort of work hardens it so it's more sturdy. But we'll see if that works. I'll give it a try anyway. I've been debating the mask too. Like, how am I going to go with that? I know originally I talked about doing a plague doctor mask. I don't think I have the guts to wear that out in public, and I don't think it's really appropriate for me to wear it out in public. So I just may make another type of mask. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so that's sort of where I am right now. Again, sorry I wasn't here on, I guess it was Sunday, right? Yeah, Sunday. I will definitely be on here on Thursday, hopefully with some sense of things being better than they are now. Oh, man, I'm super tired. It's been a stressful week. And we're only, halfway through at this point for me. All right, so I will catch you on Thursday. So for now, thanks for joining me. I will see you in, I guess, 2 days' time. And until then, take care, stay safe, and have a good night. Crazy world we're all living in right now.